Hello, everybody. We are coming at you live from all over the world today. So thank you for joining us on the third Thursday of December for this first expert chat. Focused on how do you get started with intelligent automation, RPA, hyperautomation. So we are going to do our cursory introductions, kind of going around the room. And we're going to start with Amahl. So I'm going to ask you to give a quick introduction, and then I'm going to give you a quiz question right off the bat to get us started. So let's start with that introduction.
All right, great. Amahl Williams. I'm currently with SYKES. I've been in RPA for a little over 3 years now. Also published a little bit of content on Forbes talking about how technology can improve our lives. Really excited to be here, ready for your quiz.
Okay, so with your RPA experience, my quiz for you is, what is RPA? The dictionary definition to get us started.
You know, it's actually funny. I read a bunch of them before we started the show today. So let me try to give it to you in 7th grade English. RPA is basically just software that interacts with other software like humans do. But when you're using software like RPA, what you want to think about is you don't necessarily want to automate a process just the way that humans are doing it today. You want to leverage the full capabilities of the robots. You don't necessarily need to be slavish to the desktop. And RPA as a tool is awesome at working with legacy systems and also cutting edge current SaaS platforms as well. So RPA for us, as humans, it frees us up to do some more of the things that we actually enjoy doing, but it also makes sure that our businesses don't miss out on the critical things that they need to be successful in times like this, you know, pandemics and such. So I think RPA is a very useful tool. I think that if you understand it at its core, you're really in a position as a company to make sure that you're competitively advantaged against your peers towards adoption. And then also as a professional, the reason why I joined the industry is RPA added 25 years to my career. So I'm in the driver's seat. I love the industry. Really glad to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you for taking my quiz question to get us started. So now, Wayne, you are up for your introduction, and I have got your question geared up and ready to go. Thank you for dressing for the occasion with the bow tie, sir.
Dressed to impress. I thought at least if I look the part, if I don't sound it, then it doesn't make as much difference. So hi everybody, Wayne Butterfield here. I work for ISG Automation, similar to Amahl, and as you'll hear from Kieran, lots of experience in the industry. I spent the last 10 years making use of RPA and other automation technologies in the various roles that I've been in. But actually, I've spent probably the last 15 years kind of using technology as an early adopter to help create business value and drive business efficiency. And that ranges from RPA to chatbots and virtual agents to channel shift, online chat and other communication channels. So lots of experience in and around this world of driving and changing the way organizations work through the use of technology.
All right. So your quiz question is, what is intelligent automation?
Ooh. So intelligent automation is, very much building on what Amahl has just explained with regards to RPA. And I think probably the best way I can describe what intelligent automation is versus what RPA is I akin RPA to handwork, right? It's the copying and pasting, the moving of data from one place to another. And RPA is amazing at doing handwork. But if you think about the business, the enterprise, business processes, we're not only using our hands, we're not only doing the moving of data from one place to another. We use other components in our body, in our head. And intelligent automation is the automation of the head work and the handwork to create this digital worker. And what do I mean by head work? So imagine you are looking at something. So, your eyes, the ability to use a technology to replicate what you see. So OCR, image recognition, the ability to read. So using natural language processing to read an email, to read a note in a CRM system. understand intent. So again, going down that NLP, it's great to read, but actually, what is the purpose of this written communication, and what do I need to do on the back of this comms? So, you know, read and understand, really important. Decide. So we make decisions, micro decisions, complex decisions constantly. We don't actually realize how many decisions we make as people on a almost, you know, second by second basis. Technology needs to be able to replicate those micro and massive decisions if we are to automate some of the processes that we do. So things like cognitive reasoning and machine learning, really key components of intelligent automation. And then finally, like we're doing today, we converse. So this communication, two-way communication. So it's all of those components together, in my view, is what we class as intelligent automation.
Perfect. We've got a lengthy dictionary here, guys.
I want to bow tie. It makes me answer.
Your quick introduction, and then we will do one last definition before we dive into our conversation.
God, well, look, I'm Kieran. I've been in automation in big, small, global, whatever firms for the last 2.5 decades. So now I'm feeling old. I think my claim to fame is my first robot was in the year 2000. She was called Solly in a legal firm, and she sent out text messages and emails to let people know when they had to contact the law firm or when their legal cases reached a particular critical point, and then also sent out information about how to log in online and track your case. But like the chaps, I've sat between the business and technology teams for the last goodness knows how many years, translating between both, and that I find is a fantastic skill to have, because I love knowing the business side of things. And let's be honest, like most businesses, I sort of say it's not that you have an automation strategy alone. You have a business strategy. Your automation, your digitization, your HR strategy goes with that. And part of my hopeful skill set, which has worked so far, is to understand the business strategy, understand the IT, work out where you can apply fantastic tooling like RPA, which is a kind of emerging tech, although we may argue differently that it's been around for so many years. But emerging technologies and what I can describe as usual technologies to make businesses run a little bit better, faster, more efficient, add top line, take off cost on the bottom line, or whatever else. So that's been my sins for the last 25 years.
Wonderful.
I'm nervous about the question.
So we've defined RPA, we've defined intelligent automation. Next up is hyperautomation. Give me your 30-second dictionary definition for hyperautomation.
What Wayne said plus steroids, I think. It's interesting because a lot of people wonder, like, is it an actual real thing? And it's a Gartner phrase. That's where it came from. And again, if you look at the actual phrase itself, it talks about using all those same technology that Wayne mentioned to do, as Amahl saying, I call that the clickety-click, as Wayne saying the finger bit, and also to do the thinkety-think, which is the head bit. But what Gartner were describing is, look, it means going that little bit further about getting the automation to do the automation. So you have process mapping tools that automate that. You have code checking tools that do that. You have automation that follows work streams that build, you know, new automations. But again, it doesn't sound too different than intelligent automation, if truth be told, maybe a little bit. Well, the only difference I would give if I'm trying to explain it is that for years, organizations have looked at optimizing processes, and that's been the mantra. They look at a process, they apply the technology, they make it more efficient. What I'm a fan of is something called digital disruption. I use digital transformation to say, look, what we actually need to do is look at where customers sit, what they're willing to pay for, where's their value to be had, and then setting a business strategy or course of direction at that to delivering new and better value using all kinds of automation and digital technologies, and then creating what I would describe as a digitally dexterous firm. In other words, an organization, and again, that's a Gartner phrase. I thought it was mine. It's not. It's theirs. Darn, they're thinking of things first. But creating this organization that moves at a pace that modern organizations and modern customers want, and engaging everyone in the organization to become digitally fluent or digitally literate to allow them to derive new value. And that's not just the lazy headcount reduction. That's about driving new incomes, making things more efficient, driving new value from data. So if it was to say hyperautomation, it's Wayne's plus Amahl's plus a little bit of steroid, plus a little bit of marketing, pizzazz, and then the idea being a digitally dexterous firm can move at pace using great technology to do the clickety-click and the thinkety-think. That's
the definition between RPA, like the major difference between RPA and that AI and hyperautomation is the handwork and the headwork, or the clickety-click and thinkety-think coming together. I'm using all of your nice little catchphrases. For anybody that I haven't had the opportunity to interact with before, my name is Emma Roloff. I focus on helping our customers manage their digital transformation, whether they're starting at ground zero with paper or all the way up to the things that we're talking about today with intelligent automation and hyperautomation. So I'm going to keep throwing some questions at these guys as we go through the next 20 minutes here and add some color commentary along the way as well. So
will you be scoring us, Emma? That's the question.
So as we head into a little bit more of the discussion, you touched on this a little bit already, Kieran, but Amahl, I'm going to ask for your opinion on, is there truly a difference between these terms? We talked a little bit about how similar hyperautomation and intelligent automation are, but I think for anybody that's starting on this journey, to be a little crass, they're wondering what the hell is the difference and if they need to care. So I'm looking for you to help us with that. And first, before we dive into that, I've got to say, yesterday you said you were hoping for a good beard day, and I'm gonna give you a compliment. I think you accomplished that goal. So with that, why don't we dive into my question? Is there truly a difference between these terms?
You know, it's the natural juices and berries, and I'm still gonna give Kieran the recipe after the show is over. But you know, Kieran's been cheeky all morning, and I kind of want to be punchy. You know, I know what hyperautomation is not. You know, it's not a single-digit COE with one robot in production. But I think when we look at these things, I know that my industry peers are frustrated because new terms come out, right? There's 700 people that are competing for the same customers. You know, there's over 40 platforms that I think matter. Wayne did a great job, you know, articulating the stack. I think when we look at these things, you know, and we were talking previously as a group, we were talking about, you know, what is, you know, the goal? What is the outcome? And I said, you know, there's only a couple of skyscrapers in digital transformation, and we know who those brands are. We benchmark them. We see how some of their leaders become chief customer officers at Blue Prism. We see how some of the heads of those programs now go and start their own automation companies. So for me, it's no longer about, can the robot connect to my key applications anymore? Can it connect to my CRM of record? Can it connect to my ERP of record? Do I have the right talent internally? Do I have the right partner? Do I have my environment set up for enterprise scale? There's a lot of these questions that companies are asking as they mature as companies, that if you're truly at the hyperautomation stage, and I'm a recovering Gartner client, I am a fan of theirs. Arthur is great. Kathy is brilliant. But what we need to understand is that there is a lot of information out there that can confuse you. And there are a lot of ways to do this wrong. But to me, there's only two ways to do it right. And I think if the pandemic has taught me anything, I've looked at two center of excellences, and I won't call them out because I was actually surprised. I had a call with one of them, one of the largest retailers we know in actually UK and Americas. And 2 years ago, they were under duress. Their COE was 30 people. Nobody had certification. They were trying to train the trainer. The developers were working part-time. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And fast forward to now, and I was shocked at this actually, because when I talked to her, I was going to be like, are you guys, you know, is your COE 35 people, right? Do you guys still need training? Come to find out, in 24 months, the COE is now 100 people. The business is involved, right? And I think what it comes down to, really at the end of the day, is you have to do the work. And at each one of these stages, I'll take one operating model because I'm the most versed in it. But the robot operating model, you have initialize, where you identify your team, identify your value cases, identify your operating model and your governance, right? You have your industrialized stage, where you're somewhat dangerous. Your team is putting low complexity automations into production. Your SMEs that aren't too busy or too difficult are now part of transformation. You may potentially be hiring for the roles. You may start to now bring some of the digital capability in-house from your partner. And then the last stage is going to be institutionalized. And I think, you know, for the marquee companies, Nokia, for example, Lloyd's Bank, another example, ADP, another example, and I can keep going. For the companies that have figured it out, they're no longer asking the questions that the folks who are just getting started are asking. But whether you're at this side of the stage or at this side of the stage, there's one true thing about this. You can't do RPA as a side hustle. You can't do digital transformation as a weekend thing. You can't do it if you're never putting your hands on the keyboard. It does take a lot of work. There is a learning curve. You do need help. Your company is going to be working together like it has never worked together before. It's going to be learning an entirely new vernacular. Your IT team is going to be exceptionally uncomfortable, right? Unless your partner is doing a great job of educating them on what is best practice. But all of these things in harmony, I think the biggest thing, and this is where probably some of the frustration comes from when it comes to these terminologies, is people are declaring victory too soon. So here's somebody declaring victory too soon. I gave 2,000 hours back to the business. That is a tactical automation, my opinion. I did end-to-end automation in a single area, like procure to pay, record to report, or order to cash. Better, still tactical. When you're talking about value-driven transformation, it sounds different. We gave $7 million back to the business. We invested $5 million and we saved $50 million in 18 months. So when we're looking at it, Kieran, you had an awesome piece where you said, hey, if the COE isn't paying for itself, and I can't remember what the specific period of time was, I'm assuming it's a year, right? Because who has 2 years anymore? You're not really being successful. So I think the goal is when people start, they do want to be successful. We just released a piece in SYKES Quarterly saying you can't fail thrice. But to be successful, you have to understand that there is a right way to do this. You can only have one number one priority, and you can't wing it, and you can't do this in your part-time. So to really achieve this, you have to have the key roles in your COE. You do need a partner to get started, because I haven't seen a skyscraper built yet without a partner. And then lastly, you do need to have the openings. People's business cards need to change. The way you talk about transformation needs to change. But then also, for some of the brands that I mentioned, like the ADPs of the world, when you're doing this work, you do have a competitive advantage in the way that you talk about your organization. JP Morgan Chase, just as another example. Scotiabank, there's so many examples. When they're successfully doing, and when you're from one as well, so I don't mean not to call out Telefonica, because I think Telefonica is a skyscraper. But there's skyscrapers out there, and then there's COEs that aren't at best practice, and they seem to have the most time to create content. So I just want to make sure that when we call it out, only one number one priority. The COE, in my opinion, your digital capability has to be self-sustaining before it is self-sufficient. Some people like to be self-sufficient first. I think self-sustaining is great because we're no longer questioning it as if it's a cost center. It's a value center. And once it's a value center, we all talk about, I enjoy those calls. We all talk about it differently.
So thank you for that, Amahl. And I want to tap Kieran to get his viewpoint on, you talked a little bit about this when we were talking about, is there truly a difference between this term or these terms? And Amahl, you shared that there is in fact a difference between tactical automation and maybe what we're looking at with RPA versus true digital transformation with these other terms of intelligent automation and hyperautomation. Kieran, do you want to add just a little bit to that before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, briefly, I have to say there is differences. So exactly what Amahl said, absolutely difference between the different technologies and toolings and different purpose of using them. Ultimately, as a customer, I don't care. I just want automation. And what I get really frustrated with at times is everybody has to sell their tool. And therefore, you're not going to have, company A describing it as cognitive, company B going, oh, I'll call it cognitive too. It's a branded term to try and get people to buy their product. I don't care as the customer. Companies need to realize that. As Wayne said, you need the thinkity-think, the clickety-click. Give me the tools to do the job. As Amahl said, get started with RPA, use it as a catalyst tool. But for the goodness sake, industry, please stop confusing people. Agree some common terms. Help us out here a little bit. It took me 6, 8, 9 months to understand terms and products and whatever else. And that's not fair because, as Amahl said, organizations just don't have time anymore. So I'm a fan of, guys, girls, stop using multiple terms. Just agree them, sell your products on features, and I'll buy. Anything else just is confusing my mind and confusing the market.
Okay, so you set me up perfect for this next question then. Wayne, I'm looking to you. You mentioned in your introduction that you have experience kind of on the customer side helping do these implementations as well as now in that vendor role. Should you start your transformation with RPA or other automation tools, or do we jump right in and go full steam ahead with AI and hyperautomation?
Depends what you want to do, really. Like for me, if you're looking at the tool versus the problem you're trying to solve, then you're probably on the hiding to nothing. And that's one of the challenges I think that we have here is that we have a hammer, we're looking for nails, In reality, what we really need to do when you're starting is you need to figure out what are the problems that we have in our organization, and is automation one of the solutions to helping us create. And again, what is it that you're looking to create? Is it business value? Is it cost out? Is it revenue generation, etc.? So rather than get into, in my view, what tooling should we be using, more like what problems are we trying to solve, and what is our business strategy to help solve those problems is probably a better way, I would say, to start and to approach. And once you kind of made those initial stabs, if automation is the technology solutions that are going to add value to your business, then a lot of organizations do start with RPA, and I tend to agree that is probably from an automation tool perspective probably the right way to go, mainly because it's reasonably simple from a technology perspective. That's not to say that it's that easy to implement in an organization, but as a tooling, it's no code, low code, and so that makes it easy enough. And it allows you to create some foundations in your organization that you can then reuse as you start to move through the IA spectrum, as I spoke, and hyperautomation. That said, if you are looking at what true transformation potentially is, then I would say that my view of hyperautomation is really understand your processes at a process discovery phase, process mining, task mining, conversation mining, really understand the problem in the business and get an analytics and data. Look at BPM solutioning. Is there a way of being able to create a BPM layer that creates the right process, then automate, and then use data at the back end to prove that you've created business value? The transformation way of doing hyperautomation, that for me is hyperautomation, those kind of 4 layers. That's where you want to get to, but actually that is a big program of work. Where do you start? RPA is probably a good place to start, but it's not necessarily the end.
Can I just be your hype girl for a second and talk about how much I appreciate the fact that you differentiated what digitization and how to kind of start with those building blocks looks like and how that is different. I think right now we are in a world where buzz terms and all of us are in this industry talking about this stuff on a day in and day out basis. But when you're a customer sitting there and you're wondering, where do I start and what does this look like? Sometimes it can be as simple as you start at ground zero and you build a foundation and you continually add on those layers of automation until you ultimately get to that state of nirvana where you're transformed. But I would get, based on the conversation that we're having today, there will probably be new tools and new words and new things to learn by the time that you reach that highest level. But not every organization is going to be starting off with AI, and not every organization should be paying attention to that. I'm going to transition into our next question here with a little bit of, I mentioned we're coming at you from all over the world. We've got 2 people from the UK, 2 people from the US. We've been having these conversations with people all around the world. And one of the things that someone from Europe said to me the other day is, well, the US is so far along in this journey. What advice do you have to European countries that are just getting started? And my initial reaction was, oh, no. We are not that much farther ahead, or I would argue a lot of companies might even be farther behind. And so I want to start by talking about whether you're in Europe, UK, or here in the US, and you're looking to start this journey. Kieran, can you start by sharing why you need to start now? If some of you are on that hyperautomation journey, if you're starting at the beginning, why is now the time?
Yeah, I laugh here, Emma. We're talking about confusing terms, and we're using terms like hyperautomation, digitally dexterous, and fluent. So we maybe need to provide a dictionary for people when we're talking here. I think it's a mixture of 2 things here, really. The first one is, if COVID has taught us anything, it's that those digitally automated, analytically driven firms are winning. You look at the Amazon Web Services of the world, the Starlings. Businesses are digital, they're remote, it's work anywhere, deliver it digitally. So to a degree, it's a bit of digital Darwinism. Unless you're actually in the game, then you're not going to thrive and survive. You're actually probably going to fail. You know, Darwin is, or COVID also taught us, you know, this resiliency bit is key. And I don't mean it naughtily. The thing that fell over during this pandemic was people. You know, we all got locked out, you know, supply chains broke, and therefore when you digitize and automate supply chains and everything else, you tend to live that little bit longer. You know, the one thing I would say at this moment in time is that organizations, if they're not looking at digitization, automation, you know, what are they actually doing? You know, they're not going to progress. And the nice thing, and this is the good thing about this industry, it's hyper competitive. There's a ton of tools out there. That in itself is a challenge to select the tool for you and for your budget. But the thing is, all organizations can use cloud tools, any tool, big three, so-called top 10, so-called top 52, or whatever else, to actually transform their organizations to survive, number one, in the digital age, and number two, hopefully to goodness, thrive and create new value models.
All right. Well, guys, we have about 5 minutes left with our time together. So what I want to do, and this is going to be testing your concise message points here. Again, I'm going to go around the room starting in our first, actually, we'll go reverse. Kieran, what is your, see, I'm keeping you on your toes. Kieran, what is your word of advice for everybody as they're starting this automation journey? If you could give them, let's say, a 30-second, here's my words of wisdom, go.
I don't know if I could manage 30 seconds. So I think the key thing is, Emma, just get started. You know what I mean? Everybody sort of wonders and worries about digitization and digital transformation, and they look 5 and 3 and 2 years ahead. You know, 5 for strategy, 3 to do it, 2 to get started. Just put a robot on the desktop, find a process that, you know, allows you to automate it. You know, you might be a little bit more adventurous and maybe get some OCR in, as Wayne was mentioned earlier on, scanning some documents or read some emails, but don't do anything too complicated that you're going to fail. But jump in, do something and learn. And then once you've a lot more knowledge than you currently do, then you can start to build a business case for automation, whatever flavor you want to call it, intelligent, hyper, or cognitive, or goodness knows what, and have a bit of fun with it. Do as Amahl says, really build the team. It doesn't happen by itself, and it isn't, you know, going to happen overnight, but you can build a brilliant business case and a brilliant business with RPA, intelligent automation tools, or hyper automation tools, whatever you want, but just get started. Get started and learn, build automation muscle, and then keep going.
Wonderful. So Wayne, you're going to be up in the middle here. I'm coming to you. What is your words of wisdom for people on how do we get started?
Yeah, I mean, as Kieran said, you know, there is now, you know, not like it was when I started. It was me, myself, and maybe about 3 or 4 other organizations. Now there is an absolute mountain of content, much of which is kind of put out into the realms of LinkedIn via Kieran, with lots of expert advice. So there's a lot of information there. I think the key thing is, you know, get started. The technologies themselves are not always that complex, but you do really need to think about this as a program of work. You know, the complexity does not come with deploying your robot. Your complexity comes with everything that surrounds that: the team, the people, the comms, the strategy, all of those things. You know, the creation of your pipeline, the sustainability. All of these things are really important. This is a way of working that you are bringing into your organization, not a technology. And I think, you know, if you treat it like a way of working, treat it like a program of work that you can nurture, build upon, but gain benefits quickly from, then I think you'll be, you know, you'll start off on a good footing.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Amahl, I tapped you first, and now you're going to round out our time together. What is your advice for people as they get started on this journey?
So I'm trying not to use any brand names when I say this, but I go back to this one point, and Wayne had the privilege. I think I have a privilege as well. We have similar senseis in our pedigree, right? And so we're only really as formed as the practitioners, right? And I'm getting closer to becoming a practitioner every day. But as organizations, you know, one, get started. I think we all agree upon that. But you really have to have your head wrapped around 1 or 2 perspectives. Self-sufficiency, right? or self-sustaining. And the self-sufficiency pathway is the longest path. I'll just give you one data point. For example, in one platform, to complete the required training just for one resource takes 34 months, right? An additional platform, 60 courses, right? And I'll spare you how long that takes. And what we need to understand is, right, back to Kieran's initial point, is if your organization's digital capability is not paying for itself in 8 months, 12 months, 10 months, right? It's a failed exercise. And so what you really need to understand is that when you get started, as your team is building up its own capability, right, its own core competencies, its own going from part-time employees to full-time employees, to changing the business cards, to hiring interns, to bringing in outside experts, to hiring your first solution designer. What you really want to think about is, don't make the mistakes that other large organizations have made. Don't have $2.5 million in overhead and headcount and no robots in production. It's very important that you get robots in production as soon as possible, and you do want to have a handful of use cases across that stack. And the reason why is because with most organizations, the people who are the furthest away from seeing the robots do what they do, they haven't seen the demo videos, they haven't seen the robots do their work, they are going to be the most skeptical. And a lot of times they're the ones who are in front of the budget. But I will tell you this, my first automation project at a hospital, I loved it because at the hospital, they used to dread Mondays. They're like, Monday was the worst day of the week. He's like, I used to try to line up all my PTO days for Monday because Monday was time card exercise and payroll. And when we did the automation specifically in that area for this hospital, who I won't name, they got half their business day back. Guess what they don't question anymore? The value of automation. So that first use case gave them permission to scale. But what you really need to understand is that if you're going to build a world-class center of excellence, it takes some time and there is a lot of cost. So what is the goal in your business? Are you trying to transform your business, or are you trying to create a world-class center of excellence? And I think most of our customers are trying to transform their business. And that first starts, like we said, by getting started, regardless of what the use case is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for your time today, and for everybody that joined us and was commenting along. My closing notes, just to distill what these guys said: start now. Don't focus on what term you're using or technology is behind it. Focus on the business outcome that you're looking to accomplish, and start today. I said that twice because I think the biggest message here is start now. If you haven't, you're missing an opportunity. But again, anybody who joined us live will be here again next month, same time, same place, LinkedIn Live, third Thursday of the month. And, you know, I can't say exactly time because it's different for everybody. As you can see in the chat, we've got people from all around the world. But any questions that you guys have, reach out to the group. We're more than happy to continue giving you great information, and we'll talk with you all soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, folks. Bye. Bye.